Today's documentary, The Vanished Keepers, the Flannan Isles Mystery. The lighthouse stood empty. On the remote, wind-lashed rock of Eilean Mòr, the massive white tower, a bastion of Victorian engineering, was dark. On December 26, 1900, the steamer Hesperus fought its way through heavy seas to deliver relief, keeper Joseph Moore, and fresh supplies. The flag was not flying. No answering wave greeted their approach. A profound, unnatural silence hung over the island. Moore, his dread mounting with every step, clambered up the steep path. The main gate was shut. The entrance door to the keeper's quarters was locked. He let himself in with his own key and called out. No one answered. The kitchen was deserted. A half-eaten meal sat cold on the table. A chair lay overturned on the stone floor. The clock on the wall had stopped. James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald McArthur, the three experienced, hardened lighthouse keepers, had vanished into thin air. This is not a ghost story. It is a true, unsolved mystery. A story of isolation, of duty, of a puzzle so baffling it would haunt the annals of maritime history. To understand the magnitude of the disappearance, you must first understand the place. The Flannan Isles are a lonely cluster of rocks rising from the North Atlantic. For centuries, they were feared by sailors, a jagged teeth waiting to tear the hull from any ship that strayed too close. In 1895, construction began on a lighthouse on the largest isle, Eilean Mòr. It was a Herculean task. The lighthouse itself, when completed in 1899, was a masterpiece, a 75-foot tower housing a first-order Fresnel lens that could cast its beam 24 nautical miles out to sea. It was automated, modern, and utterly isolated. The keepers worked a punishing rotation. Their world was a tiny, self-contained universe of granite, sea, and sky. They were men of a particular breed, stoic, resilient, disciplined. Our three men were the embodiment of that competence. James Ducat, aged 43, was the principal keeper, a family man, a veteran of the service, solid and dependable. Thomas Marshall, aged 40, was the second assistant. A former seaman, he was described as strong-willed and occasionally temperamental, but thoroughly professional. The third assistant was Donald McArthur, aged 28. He was the occasional keeper, a burly, capable man known for his strength. He was also a family man. These were not rookies or men prone to fancy. Their routine was dictated by the logbook, the clock, and the unyielding demands of the light. They would never, under any normal circumstances, have all left the lighthouse unattended, especially in the brutal winter months. That was the first and most fundamental rule. Now, let us return to that chilling moment of discovery with Joseph Moore. After his initial shock, he raced back to the landing stage and signaled to the Hesperus. The ship's captain, Jim Harvey, and the superintendent of lighthouses, Robert Muirhead, immediately came ashore. Together with Moore, they conducted a systematic and increasingly frantic search of the entire island. The lighthouse itself was in perfect working order. The lamps were clean and ready to be lit. The lenses were spotless. The beds were made, as if expecting their occupants. But in the kitchen, the scene told a different story. Crucially, 2 sets of the men's oilskin coats and boots were missing. But one set remained hanging on its peg. The west landing, where supplies were brought in, showed signs of recent, catastrophic damage. Iron railings were bent and twisted. A heavy box, used for storing ropes, had been wrenched from its concrete mooring and smashed. A rock weighing over a ton had been dislodged. It looked as though a giant hand had swiped across the infrastructure. Yet, on the east landing, everything was in perfect order. But the most haunting discovery was the logbook. In the watchroom, Superintendent Muirhead opened it. The entries were meticulous, up to a point. The last normal entry was dated December 13th, noting that a storm had been raging for days. Then, the handwriting changed. An entry for December 14th read, "Keeper Ducat irritable." This was unusual. Personal comments were forbidden. The next entry, for the 15th, was even more bizarre. "Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all." But the most shocking entry was the final one, logged at 9 a.m. on December 15th. "Severe winds, the worst I have ever seen. Waves very high. They are breaking over the lighthouse. Everything shipshape. James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald McArthur have been praying. This entry was a contradiction that screamed into the silence. The official weather logs from nearby Lewis and passing ships reported calm seas and clear visibility. The great storm described in the logbook simply did not happen. Had the keepers hallucinated it? Were they documenting a localized, supernatural tempest? Superintendent Robert Muirhead was a practical, no-nonsense man. He led the official investigation, interviewing the relief crews and the families. He walked the island again and again, trying to reconstruct the final hours. His official report proposed the most logical explanation. A monstrous rogue wave had swept them clean off the rock. The Northern Lighthouse Board accepted it. The case was closed. But almost immediately, the questions began. Why would all three experienced keepers leave the lighthouse unmanned? Protocol was sacrosanct. One man always remained inside. Why would Donald McArthur, without his oilskins, have gone out into what they believed was a raging storm? The untouched oilskins on his peg suggested he had rushed out in his shirt sleeves. The logbook entries remained an insurmountable problem. The described storm did not exist. The phrase "God is over all" and the note about praying were deeply out of character. Into the vacuum of a logical explanation, theories rushed like the North Atlantic tide. The oldest theory spoke of a curse. Eilean Mòr was known as the Green Island, a place of spirits. They spoke of mysterious little men or phantom birdmen, the Fian, who were said to haunt the rocks. Some fishermen refused to land there. Then there are the more terrestrial, yet equally chilling, theories of human conflict. Did a bitter argument erupt between the strong-willed Marshal and the responsible Ducat? The isolation madness theory holds powerful sway. Psychologists later coined the term lighthouse madness for the psychotic breaks that could afflict men in extreme, sensory-deprived environments. The endless noise of wind and wave, the confinement, the lack of novelty, could it have shattered the minds of three sane men simultaneously, leading them to walk as one into the sea? And what of the possibility of a more mundane, yet tragic, sequence? Perhaps one keeper slipped on the cliff, a second went to help, and a third followed. The truth is, every theory collapses under the weight of a contradictory piece of evidence. For over 120 years, the Flannan Isles Mystery has resisted solution. It is a perfect, locked-room mystery, but the room is a windswept island, and the lock is made of unanswered questions. The impact was profound and personal. The families of James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald McArthur were left with nothing but a pension and a devastating, unresolvable grief. The maritime world was shaken. Procedures were tightened, communications improved, but the shadow of Eilean Mòr lingered over every remote station. The story entered popular culture, inspiring poems, songs, and episodes of Doctor Who and The X-Files. It became a template for tales of supernatural disappearance. But beneath the folklore, the real human tragedy remains. These were three men who did a difficult, vital job. They kept the light burning so others could pass safely. Today, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse is automated. No human keeper has lived on Eilean Mòr for decades. The stone buildings stand empty, maintained by occasional maintenance crews. The beam still cuts through the night, a silent, mechanical sentinel. But if you listen to the wind howling around those cliffs, it's easy to imagine the echoes of 1900. The scrape of a chair on a stone floor, the frantic turning of logbook pages. The mystery endures because it speaks to our deepest fears, of the unknown, of the power of nature to erase us without a trace, and of the fragile line between sanity and madness. We may never know what truly happened on Eilean Mòr in December 1900. All that remains is the lighthouse, the rocks, and the enduring, haunting question. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, please subscribe to our channel. We bring you fascinating documentaries on history, science, civilizations, mysteries, and the untold stories that shaped our world. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you never miss a new release. See you in the next one.